United States actions against Puerto Rico. I was listening to a video in which I responded regarding Puerto Ricans, and I mentioned about us being treated as second-class citizen, and he basically said, "Oh no, I'm not a second-class citizen. Hey, neither am I." But the whole idea is, are we treated as second-class citizen? And it was in regards to talking about Latinos. And I have to mention a lot of Latinos are crossing the border. I grant that we don't want criminals inside, but just because you're crossing the border doesn't mean you're a criminal. You are undocumented. We want to allege these stuff, but reality is we have to look at the whole concept, right? Because a lot of these Latinos that are crossing over looking for a better life, and they wouldn't be crossing over looking for a better life if we as America, a bank cartel, wasn't robbing them. And I'm not talking about the 1400s. I'm talking about the 1900s and not too far. As you can see here, and I'm going to put it up there so you can see it. So that brings, on top of fractional lending, that brings countries into poverty in which they end up coming over here. So it's like a karma. Now, being that he said like he was trying to separate Latinos from Hispanics and all that, I don't agree. I get what he's trying to say, but reality is when you go down even further, we were all Native Americans, right? Or we were from different tribes of Indians. For example, as I mentioned before, you can watch the videos before, we were the Arawak Taino, which came from South Carolina all the way to Florida, to the Caribbean, Jamaica, Bahamas, Santo Domingo, Cuba, Panama, and believe it or not, even part of Venezuela. And obviously, down South America, they had also what is called the Incas. I'm sure many heard, right? Or the Mayans. So there were different tribes of indigenous people, but nevertheless, because at the time we had a barter system, we all intermingled and trade, and who knows what else we have done, right? So we are all mixed. We all belong to the human race. But getting back to the Puerto Rico, because I mentioned about being second-class citizen, let me tell you part of the stories that you may not know, besides us being Arawak Taino Indians being raped, being almost wiped out to the point that they brought in African slaves and mixed us and all that. Let me give you a little more information. Back when we belonged to Spain, okay, and the United States came in 1898, right? And it was a 6-day Spanish War, 6 months, Spanish War. They took over Puerto Rico. There was a lot of things that happened, including they basically robbed us, all right? We had, the currency we had was from Spain, okay? And eventually we lost 60% of our buying power at that time. But let me go a little further, more recently that maybe you may not know. In 1950, and I'll put it up here so you can see it, all right, in Jayuya, Utuado, there was a massacre. It was on October 30th, 1950. It was a couple of Puerto Rican nationalists that wanted their freedom, and many of them were killed, okay, or in prison. Look that up. I want you also to look at forced sterilization of the Puerto Rican woman from 1930 to 1970 without Puerto Rican women knowing, okay? Many didn't consent to it. They were being given pills or giving stuff in the water in which they became sterile, right? And a lot of them having a lot of complications, including death. You should look that into. Also, the experimental with birth control pills in 1950. I'll put it up here so you can read it. I'm trying not to take too much time. Operation Bootstrap in 1940 through 1970. Okay, that was economic policies encouraged Puerto Ricans to migrate to the mainland United States under the pretense of modernization. Vieques bombing, I'm sure many of us remember that, from 1941 to 2013. Right, not only was the United States throwing bombs in our islands, for those that don't know, Puerto Rico has more than one island. You always know about one island. We have a few islands, by the way, and one of them happens to be Vieques. Well, they not only were testing and bombing, okay, including nuclear bombs, they were bringing other countries to test their bombs as well, which a lot of us Puerto Ricans end up having cancer and all that. You can verify this. Like I said, Vieques bombing range. Our people stood up, okay, and eventually the military left Vieques in 2003, but environmental damage remains. Now, those are the things that we win as second-class citizens. Like I told you, not only that, obviously, we can't even vote for our own president unless we are in the mainland. If that doesn't constitute a second-class citizen, I do not know what is. But I want to debunk the myth of Puerto Rican economic contribution in dollars. And I'm going to put this up here because I don't want to waste too much time. But the Puerto Rican economic production is 104 billion as in 2020. I'm sure it's more now, but it's 200 and in 2020, $104 billion. For those people that think that we don't pay federal tax and they think the government gives us something, the government never gives you anything that they don't take from you first. Please keep that in mind, okay? And again, who is the real government? As you see, it's not the people, it's not we the people as supposed to be, right? It's a group of families running the United States, right? The banking cartel. And you could see the other video in which I verify this, and I mentioned name, including Jekyll's Island, in which in secrecy they created the Federal Reserve Bank. I also spoke about, for those that don't know, your dollar right now is at 90% loss, is 97% of its buying power, its value, and I'll put that up as well, because basically, if we didn't have a Federal Reserve Bank, your dollar will be so much more powerful and will buy a lot more. So basically, little by little, they're robbing the American wealth while they become very uber rich, right? And then you find out why you can't afford a home, why you don't qualify for a home, why food is very expensive. And they'll play all this lie and keep them. And I want to add to this because we lost 97% of our buying power. This is a fact. And that's measured by baskets of goods, right? Or what is called consumer price index. However, even that is not accurate. They play with numbers because, again, back then, before 1913, we didn't have no IRS taxes, no payroll, none of that. So that actually robs from your wealth or robs from your payroll or from your paycheck getting paid, right? Because not only your buying power reduced, but now you got to pay for health benefits, health insurance, you got to pay for property taxes, you got to pay for payroll, you got to pay IRS, and all these taxes that again, like I said, back in 1913, we had military, we had roads, we had all that, and we didn't need that. The Federal Reserve Bank robbed us and should be abolished. But let me go over some more stuff. Like I said, 104 billion. The tourism is from 8 to 10 billion. All right. And yes, the government gives us back from the money they take from us. They give us back 2 to 3 billion in annual and federal Medicaid dollars. And that's what you hear a lot of times, as if we live off the government when the government gets a lot of money from us. Okay. If you compare and deduct that Medicaid and all that, basically they're still making out of us 100 billions. All right. Keep in mind the Jones effect or the Jones Act effect, in which they get another 1.5 billion that basically we have to pay in addition, just because the products are rerouted in ships, right? They don't come directly to Puerto Rico, especially if it's coming from different countries. They first got to go to Florida, and then from Florida goes to Puerto Rico, right? Thus increasing an 8% tariff tax on us, which is unfair, which is why we pay that much more for products, as well as we pay payroll. So when you take all that into account, we produce a lot for the mainland, for the United States, but yet we still are treated as second-class citizens. Now, as you recall, I spoke about the action that Puerto Rico, the United States has done against Puerto Rico, right? Or our elite. But it's not just Puerto Rico, guys. Just if you may not know, I want you to look this up, and I'm going to put it up here. Tuskegee syphilis experiment from 1932 to 1972. Now, this is now regular Americans now, right? Operation MK Ultra from 1950 to 1970. Look this up. LSD, a lot of stuff happened. I'm not going to get into that because then it's going to come a little conspiracy theorist, and I don't want you to say that I'm saying that. This is actually facts. You can research it. You have no excuse. You got ChatGPT. You got DeepSeek, right, as well as Google. Another one was radiation experiment from 1940 to 1960 when we was experimenting with plutonium. Okay, another one was St. Louis radiation test from 1950 to 1960. Another one was Willowbrook State School hepatitis experiment from 1950 to 1970. And another one was overseas spray in 1950, in which it was the United States Navy sprayed San Francisco with bacteria. And why I say that? Because I want you Americans to wake up. These people don't care about you, just like they don't care about Gaza, right? And they're killing people in our own supposedly elected government are supporting them, right? And giving them billions of dollars. The same way they're killing them, they'll kill you. It's all about profits and money, and these people sold themselves. All right, our elected officials sold themselves, which is why we should abolish the IRS, abolish the Federal Reserve Bank, term limits. Let's get these senators out of power. If they don't represent first interest America, they shouldn't be representing any other country, okay, including Israel, right? And having dual citizenship. We should also abolish that, having dual citizenship representing other countries within our government. That shouldn't be allowed. Okay, if we do that and we again put our dollar, right, balanced by gold, we will get out of this issue that we are in, which I doubt it, because there's many countries, many companies that are run by these elite, like BlackRock, over trillions of dollars. Look that up as well. Imagine if they start firing many of us. So I want you to understand that I think we way past that. This is why we are in danger. Our dollar's collapsing. I wrote another video about that. It's a fact. This is why you keep hearing our leaders and you're not listening about our country going bankrupt. Listen to that, because the honest truth is there is another system, as you heard, called BRICS. A lot of nations are joining them. A lot of nations are joining that, which means that our dollars is the dollarization is happening and our dollars dying because all we have is debt. We already exceeded what we produce. Think about this. Okay, I want you to think about this. It's like saying, you have a credit card, right? So our credit card is not only maxed out, the interest that we have to pay, the minimum payment, the interest that we have to pay, we can't even afford that. So it's a matter of time, guys, and I'm being honest. I took economics when I was younger in college. Granted, I'm not as expert, but I know enough to understand what's going on. And many of you are naive to the fact. Well, thank you for watching, guys. Please like, comment, and share. God bless.